In Africa, they say, a man who runs from responsibility will one day be forced to stand still forever. Before this story begins, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and listen carefully, because this is not just a story, it is a warning. In the heart of Africa, where the red soil clung to bare feet and the wind carried the sound of drums at sunset, there stood a small village called Kijani. Kijani was peaceful, too peaceful. Everyone knew everyone, and everyone knew him. They called him Bako, not because he was brave, not because he was strong, but because Bako was the laziest man the village had ever known. Every morning, when the roosters cried and women balanced clay pots on their heads, Bako was still asleep, stretched under the shade of a giant baobab tree. While other men sharpened tools and walked to the fields, Bako sharpened excuses. The sun is too hot today. Tomorrow will be better. A man must rest to live long. The village laughed. Some mocked him, others shook their heads. But one person did not laugh. His wife, Amani. Amani was known for her strength. Her back was straight, her hands were rough, and her eyes carried fire. She woke before dawn, fetched water, worked the land, cooked, cleaned, and every evening she returned home to the same sight, Bako, resting. She said nothing, at first, because in Africa, patience is taught before anger. But patience, like water in a cracked pot, does not last forever. And little did anyone know, this silence was the beginning of something dangerous. A woman can carry a home on her back, but even the strongest back can break. Days turned into weeks, weeks into seasons. The rains came and went, the crops grew and died, and still Bako did nothing. Amani worked until her fingers bled. She carried firewood heavier than her own body. She walked miles with water pots, pressing pain into her spine. Sometimes, as she passed the baobab tree, she would see Bako laughing with other idle men. Laughing, while her feet were swollen, while her breath burned. At night, she would ask softly, "Tomorrow, will you come with me to the field?" Bako would smile lazily and say, "Why rush life, Amani? The earth will wait." But the earth does not wait. The village women began to whisper, "Is she a wife or a servant? A man who does not work is already half dead." Amani heard every word, and each word pressed heavier than the water pots on her head. Still, she stayed quiet, because she loved him, or maybe because she hoped he would change. Hope can be cruel. The day of the harvest festival arrived. Drums echoed through Kijani. The village gathered. Men proudly displayed their harvest. One by one, families stepped forward. Then it was Bako and Amani's turn. Silence fell. They had nothing. No grain, no fruit, no contribution. Eyes turned. Whispers grew sharp. Someone laughed. Another voice said loudly, "Even the land refuses to work with a lazy man." Amani stood frozen. Her face burned. Her heart cracked. Bako shrugged, as if shame were just another thing he refused to carry. That night, Amani cried alone. Not loud, not for attention. Quiet tears, the kind that change people. And somewhere deep inside her, patience finally died. The elders had always warned, words spoken in anger do not return. That night, under a dark African sky, Amani spoke words she had never planned to speak. She did not scream, she did not curse loudly. She whispered, "If he will not live like a man, then let him stand like something that does not move." The wind stopped. The fire flickered strangely. Somewhere far away, a drum went silent. Amani did not know it then, but something had heard her, and something had agreed. At sunrise, Amani stepped outside. She called Bako's name. No answer. She walked toward the baobab tree, and then she saw him. Bako stood there, upright, silent, cold, stone. His eyes frozen in shock, his mouth half open as if trying to speak. Amani screamed. The village gathered. No one laughed now, because laziness had turned into punishment, and punishment had turned into legend. By sunrise, the entire village of Kijani stood around the stone figure. No one touched him. No one joked. Children were pulled back by their mothers. Men stood with folded arms, uneasy. This was no ordinary stone. This was Bako. Some villagers whispered in fear. Others whispered in judgment. He deserved it. Laziness finally caught him. But is this not too much? The elders arrived slowly, their walking sticks pressing into the red soil. One elder circled the stone man and said quietly, "In our land, punishment does not fall without reason." All eyes turned to Amani. Her heart raced. She wanted to speak. She wanted to explain, but the words refused to come. Instead, she stood silent while the village decided her story for her. That day, Bako was placed in the center of the village, not buried, not hidden, but displayed as a warning. And Amani returned home alone. For the first time, the house was quiet. Too quiet. At first, Amani felt something she had not felt in years. Relief. No more waiting. No more disappointment. No more dragging a grown man behind her like a child. She woke up early, and no one stopped her. She worked, and no one mocked her. She ate, and no one complained. The women of the village nodded at her with respect. "You are strong. You are free now." Free. The words sounded sweet. But at night, when the fire burned low, Amani found herself staring at the empty sleeping mat. She told herself, "This is better." But freedom without warmth feels cold. Still, she pushed the feeling away, because pride had entered her heart, and pride does not like questions. Day after day, Bako stood under the sun. The heat burned his stone skin. The rain washed over him. He could not move. He could not speak. But he could think. And thinking was torture. He remembered Amani's tired face, her cracked hands, her silent patience. For the first time, he understood something painful. I was not resting. I was hiding. Tears formed in his eyes, but they did not fall. Inside his stone chest, something broke. Not his body, his pride. That night, under the moon, Bako prayed, not with words, but with regret. The rains failed that season. The land dried. Crops withered. For the first time, Amani struggled alone. She carried heavier loads. She worked longer days. There was no one to share the burden, no one to ask, "Are you tired?" The village helped, but help is never the same as partnership. One evening, exhausted, Amani passed the stone figure. She stopped. For a moment, she imagined Bako walking beside her. Silent, yes, but present. Her chest tightened. She walked away quickly, because some realizations are frightening.
That night, Amani could not sleep. The wind whispered through the hut. Her thoughts grew loud. Did I ask for change or destruction? She remembered the elders' warnings. She remembered her anger, and for the first time, fear entered her heart. Not fear of Baco, fear of herself. Outside, the stone man stood, unchanged. But inside Amani, something was beginning to crack, and the village of Kajani felt it, because this story was no longer about laziness. It was becoming a story about mercy.
Days turned into weeks. Amani woke every morning with a strange emptiness. The house was quiet, too quiet. She looked at the stone figure of Baco every time she passed the baobab tree. The same frozen eyes, the same unmovable posture. She remembered the words she whispered in anger, words that had changed his life forever. If he will not live like a man, then let him stand like something that does not move. Now she wondered, did I go too far? Even the village women noticed it. They whispered behind her back, "She looks uneasy. Even the strongest woman can feel fear." Amani's heart ached. The laughter of freedom she had felt was fading. She realized something she had not admitted before. Punishment carries a weight, not just for the one who suffers, but for the one who delivers it.
The elders of Kajani gathered under the oldest tree in the village. They spoke in slow, deliberate voices. Amani, anger is a powerful river. It can wash away injustice, but it can also destroy what you love. Amani listened silently. Her hands trembled. One elder continued, "Baco suffers because of himself, but you suffer too, because the heart cannot bear the stone you helped create." The wind rustled through the trees. The drums of Kajani seemed muted. Amani realized she had been free and yet trapped. Freedom without peace is still a prison. Each day, Amani worked in the fields, but her mind was heavy. She thought of the harvests he could have helped with. She thought of the laughter he could have shared. Pride had pushed her to punishment. Conscience whispered, "You loved him. You should have guided him, not turned him into stone." At night, she would sit by the fire, staring at the dark silhouette of Baco, and the firelight made the cracks in the stone shimmer, as if he were breathing or waiting. She wanted to cry. She wanted to run her hands over the cold surface, but fear held her back. The villagers began to notice her hesitation. The whispers returned. Even the strongest cannot escape the weight of regret. Rain failed that season. The soil cracked. The crops turned to dust. The elders spoke again. The earth does not favor anger. It listens and it teaches. Amani struggled more than ever. Her body ached, her back bent, her hands blistered. And still, Baco stood under the blazing sun, stone, silent, judging almost. She began to feel the irony. The man she had punished with anger survived every test, while she, who had been strong, was breaking under the same sun. Some nights she sat beside him and whispered, "I did this, but I did it because I loved you." No answer came, only the wind, and the stars seemed colder that night. Weeks turned into months. The village noticed a change. Amani's steps were slower, her laughter rare. Her hands, once confident, now sore and careful. Children asked,
"Mama, will Bako ever walk again?" Amani could not answer, because she knew the truth. He might walk again, but she had begun to understand the weight of anger and pride. Even the elders shook their heads. Sometimes the guilty suffer. Sometimes the innocent do too. Bako's punishment had lasted, but the cost was visible to everyone. And as the sun set over the red African earth, Amani finally realized that this story was not just about laziness. It was about the danger of words spoken in anger and the bitter price of pride. Days turned into a year. Bako still stood under the sun, a silent stone. But one morning, as the first light touched his face, a crack appeared, a tiny movement. A finger twitched. Amani noticed from afar. Her heart skipped. She did not speak. She did not run. The villagers gathered, whispering. Could it be? Is he alive? But only Bako felt it. The shame, the regret, the realization. He had wasted life. Now even stone would not forgive laziness. Bako began small. He lifted his arms. He bent his knees. He tried to walk. Each movement was agony, not of the body, but of pride. Amani watched silently. She did not rush to help. She did not say a word. And that was exactly the lesson Bako needed. Each day he worked harder. He carried water. He tilled soil. He planted seeds. The villagers noticed. They murmured, "He has learned," or "He is desperate," but no one celebrated yet, because the journey had just begun. Bako's hands blistered, his back ached, his feet were torn. Yet he did not stop. He remembered Amani's silent labor. He remembered the years he wasted. He whispered, "I will never take this life for granted again." He worked from sunrise to sunset, each drop of sweat a silent apology, each seed planted a promise to himself. And Amani, she still watched quietly. She did not nod. She did not smile. She simply let him live his lesson. Months passed. The crops began to flourish under Bako's care. This time, the harvest belonged to both, but Bako did all the work. The villagers saw the transformation. They whispered, "He has changed, truly." Amani walked past, carrying water, and saw Bako struggling with a heavy basket of yams. Her eyes softened, but she said nothing. She knew words would be cheap. Bako smiled faintly at her, not expecting praise, not asking for approval. He only wanted to show he had changed. Sometimes love speaks without words, and lessons are learned in silence. The sun set over Kijani. The red soil glowed. Bako, sweaty and exhausted, carried a full basket of grain to the hut. Amani passed him without a word. No praise, no lecture. But her eyes, they said everything. He smiled faintly, realizing, "This is enough. I have changed. No one needs to tell me I am responsible. I know now." The village breathed quietly. The story of the lazy man turned stone had ended. Not with punishment, not with anger, but with self-realization and silent respect. Bako had learned, Amani had learned, and the village watched the lesson unfold. Moral: words spoken in anger may punish, but true change is silent. True respect is earned, not demanded.